Hi, I'm Ryan North.
I'm Lori Fungi.
And I'm Sean Wilson. You're listening to Foster Family Matters, a production of CK Family Services. People united through God to enhance the physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being of at-risk children and families. Welcome back to Foster Family Matters, CK's Foster Family Matters. Thanks for joining us again today. We're so excited that you have decided to carve out a little bit of your day to listen to us. And if you've been following the show, you know that we're in the middle of a multi-part series. We're doing a summer book club study guide reading thing of The Whole Brain Child. And we're excited to be able to bring it to you. What are we talking about today? Today we're in chapter 4.
Today we're killing butterflies.
Kill the butterflies.
That sounds so violent. Why are we killing God's creatures?
This is actually one of my favorite stories in this book of how she handles this with the butterflies.
Can we maybe just kill a moth or something?
Moths are less desirable.
Yeah.
Aren't they? They eat your clothes.
They look kind of like butterflies. So.
I don't know. Disclaimer to PETA. We are just reading the words that someone else wrote. We are in no way advocating the dispatch of any of God's creatures for any reason, period. So just to recap, for those of you who may be joining, I think the recap would be go back and listen to the first 2 or 3 episodes, 2 episodes preceding this one where we did the introduction, talked about left brain, right brain. And then we went into chapter 3 where we talked about upstairs, downstairs brain. And now today we're talking about kill the butterflies, which it's going to make sense when you read the chapter. It seems a little odd on the front end, but we're talking about integrating memory for growth and healing today. Right, guys?
Absolutely.
That sounds fantastic, Sean.
I like that.
Hey, I just wanted to start by saying something that I am as fascinated as I am by the brain itself. There's a subset of that has heightened my fascination, and that is memories. And I like that they talk about 2 myths about memories that I think are commonly held beliefs in this chapter. And that's 1 is that memory is a filing cabinet, and 2, that memories are accurate, exact reproductions of events. Memories are like lies we tell ourselves. No, let me try that again. Memories are stories we tell ourselves about events that happened in the past. There's some other work on memories. You can read up on that. Van der Kolk and Perry and people like that talk about memories. But like when you code a memory, and every time you recall it, it's a little bit different. Like if I tell a story about there's something from your childhood, and you tell a story one way, but the relationship with one of the people in that story changes either positively or negatively. How you actually recall them in the memory changes positively or negatively. And so how you feel about somebody today informs how you view them in the memory. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
Isn't that awesome? The problem with memories, though, is that trauma memories are actually a little bit more on the exact reproduction of facts, right? Because when you code a memory, when your body is under duress, or as they might say, in a heightened state of cognitive arousal, you actually code it more. You can actually recall that with higher degree of accuracy than you can with just a memory that happened of something nice you did with your grandma. And
it's not only just cognitive; it can be a body memory as well. So you feel.
To be fair, though, it's coded accurately to your experience of the event, assuming that your event was an accurate experience of what actually occurred.
I don't know what you just said, so I'm going to try to repeat back what I heard you say. So let me try that a different way and see if that answers your question. You remember it the way it happened. And obviously, there was an experiential part in how it happened.
Yeah.
Right. You remember it the way that you experienced it.
That's
rather
where
than what had happened.
I'm trying to play off of the whole thing of if you've got 2 people discussing an issue, there's your version, my version, and the truth.
And excellent, right?
And so what you're saying is that a trauma event is hard coded according to your experience of the event.
Yeah.
And for you, that is the truth. That's the truth of what actually happened.
It can be, yes, because I think it's so it penetrates so much of you. Body, soul, mind.
Right. Well, and with the body experiencing, then there's a little bit more news when it comes to trauma, that if you're placed in a situation that triggers the memory of the original trauma, your body will experience it like it did the first time.
Rapid heart rate.
all that
Increased
stuff,
blood
right?
pressure.
So if a child was physically abused and they were physically abused in their bedroom, you sending them to their bedroom for them to think about it, not a great idea, which is why anybody around connected parenting is opposed to the timeout, because for a myriad of reasons. It's not just the separation of the child from the family. It's not just communicating until you can act right, you can be part of who we are and what we're doing. It's because that might be so traumatizing for them to go and sit in their bedroom because they have all these memories of the last time they sat and waited in their bedroom for somebody to come through that door. So that's why I like that they really address those myths about memories, because I think we all just believe that when we tell a story about an event that happened in the past, it's recalled with a high degree of accuracy, and it may or may not be.
That's a great point.
I have this memory. And I was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then we moved to Albuquerque.
She's not from around these
and
parts.
then when I was 5.
You're not either.
No.
Am I the only Texan in the room?
You officially are.
Yes.
Okay, you digressed.
The rest of us got you as fast as
I'd
we
like to
could.
apologize to our viewership. Yeah.
You didn't pick up on the accents. When he asked us to do this, he's like, what?
I just thought you were from East Texas.
Far East.
Oh,
Texas.
wow. When I was 5, we moved to Dallas. But I have this memory and have always had this memory. And in New Mexico, there's tar that connects the gravel, the asphalt to the concrete. So right in front of our house, we got to play outside all day long, and we'd sit on the curb, and on the asphalt is tar that connects it. And when it gets really hot, there'd be bubbles that pop up in the tar. And so we would sit and we'd pop the tar bubbles. I mean, they're tiny. They're really, really small. And so I just remember sitting there with my 2 older sisters, and it's a fond memory. And I can experience it and feel it and almost imagine touching those tar bubbles. Okay, flash forward, I don't know, this was probably 15 years ago. And I'm sharing this story with my sisters, Jamie and Ryan. And I said, when we used to sit outside the house and pop those tar bubbles? And they're like, no, you weren't there. And I said, no, I was. She's like, Jamie was like, yeah, you were there, but you were a year and a half, maybe. You were maybe 14, 15 months old. There's absolutely no way for you to remember that. But what's interesting is that story isn't so significant that it would be told in a narrative form to other people. But the fact that I do remember it is kind of curious. And so we'll never know whether or not that's an organic memory of mine or if I just happened to hear that story being shared.
Yeah.
Right? And then I took it and I made it my own. But I think memory is really important when we look at, number one, when we're looking at kiddos in their past and when we see their behaviors, kind of like what was happening in chapters 2 and 3 of this book, that as Ryan referenced, the bedroom, this is also big in the bathroom and the shower and bath time and meal times, and just seeing if you can make some associations between potential memories or traumatic memories and the behaviors that you're seeing in your home.
So this chapter was a little along the lines of that, the deck kind of being said in that regard. This chapter with the issues surrounding the swimming lessons triggered a memory for me.
Yeah.
And so, and Shauna, you and I spoke about this earlier this week. We were at lunch or something, and somehow drowning came up in the conversation. When I was in the second grade, I almost drowned. And had to be rescued and all those things. So when we get to Labor Day, there's all the campaigns about make sure the water safety and make sure you're keeping an eye on the kids in the lake, because I think like more people drown on Labor Day weekend than the rest of the year or something crazy like that. And so these people on the radio and they're talking about water safety. And I remember driving into work one day and just like being stressed. Like I called my wife when I got to the office and said, I'm like tired from the drive, because the whole thing came flooding back to me. And it's true what they say, like if you're drowning, you don't make a sound. There's other article, things like Drowning the Silent Killer, because your body, your brain assigns every ounce of energy you have to preserving your life and will not waste any energy on being audible, like you lose your ability to speak. And honestly, it was like a Cub Scout, some kid who had like a life-saving badge who noticed me struggling in this big pool, and jumped in. Like the lifeguards didn't even notice it. And I can still remember like him, you lay people on your back and like the water rushing over my face and stuff. And so even just in the word drowning, like my body just kind of tensed up and the whole thing came flooding back. So it was an interesting starting with the kid not wanting to do the swimming lessons as part of this because that killed the butterflies. Like even just talking about it now, like I feel unsettled in my stomach. And it was 35 years ago.
You need to kill the butterflies.
I do need to kill the butterflies. How do you kill butterflies?
So speaking of butterflies, let's do that. Let's
kill them.
PETA?
Again.
People for the ethical treatment of butterflies.
Butterflies. PETA? Regardless, let's, so not to distract from kind of the flow that you guys are going on, but I have a question, and I'm hoping that you guys can help me understand. In the book, it talks about implicit versus explicit.
Explicit. Mm-hmm.
And help me understand that. And I've read it, I've listened to the audiobook, and it's a little bit, whatever.
The easiest way that I understand
buzzed in. I literally went, bzz, put my hand
I
on the
just
table.
thought that was a
Totally need a buzzer. I thought you were
weird
being
little moment
electrocuted.
She did.
Does yours involve a bike?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Ladies
Mine's
first.
are quick. Mine is really quick. Implicit memory is riding a bike. We all know how to ride a bike. We get on. We don't have to teach ourselves every single time. Explicit is recalling learning the first time you learned to ride a bike. So I can go outside and jump on a bike because it's implicit in my mind. But I can also sit here and think back when I was 5 or 6 and what that was like with my training wheels and who was out there with me and who, if I fell, if I hurt myself, what house we were living in, what neighborhood that was in, what bike that was. That's a little simple, easy way to differentiate. But I'd love to hear Ryan's.
No, I was just gonna tell. In the book they talk about neurons that fire together, wire together. I believe that's called the Hebbian principle after Canadian neurophysicist. That's right, there are Canadian neurophysicists, Jacob Hebb. And so when you experience things, neurons will fire together, and neurons that fire wire together. So one of the easiest the way that I kind of explain that usually is like, so you'll get up Sunday morning and go to church, or on Monday morning and come here, and there'll be days when you pull into the parking lot and you don't remember how you got here.
Right.
That's that
Implicit.
principle.
Kind of like autopilot.
Yeah, it's kind of like autopilot, but that's that
It's your
principle at work.
routine. It becomes such a routine that you don't need to use cognitive awareness to make it happen.
And that's implicit or explicit?
That's implicit.
That's implicit.
Yeah, so that's the autopilot thing, right? Your brain is taking care of business without you being consciously aware of it because you've done it so many times.
Breathing.
Yeah. No, that's actually different. That's actually a function of the recesses of your mind.
Is it? Sorry, I digress.
Yeah, the survival part of your brain.
It's actually part of the brainstem.
Yeah, it's the brainstem regulates those functions because one of my favorite ways that was explained was breathing is far too critical of a function to be left to your conscious
To
mind.
think about it. Absolutely.
Because you do nothing. I think about if you had to beat your heart by thinking about it.
Explicit is one of those things that autopilot, muscle memory.
No, that's implicit.
That's implicit.
Implicit. Implicit
so
is
hard
you
for
coming
me?
to work every day. The
Okay.
explicit is remembering and recalling your interview and the first day coming to work.
Okay.
Like, I think the fact that they use a diaper changing story in the book, I mean, I probably wouldn't have gone poopy diaper, but, unto each his own. They do have several books published, so I'm just going to defer to them.
Meaning the diaper changes the implicit because it becomes a routine.
Because, yeah, it's routine, right?
Right.
It's like if you play golf or tennis, there are just like there are just like 100 things you have to remember before you hit a golf ball. And if you do it enough times, you can just do it without thinking through the process. So we use things like autopilot, muscle memory. Those are terms in the common vernacular that we use for these things, but those are all examples of implicit memory.
Gotcha. Okay.
How do we do in explaining that?
Clear as mud.
I'm still a little confused, but I don't know that it's all that necessarily important that I understand it intricately. But I would like to talk about some strategies.
Okay, next question.
Let's do that. So the strategies that are listed in this one are use the remote of the mind, replaying memories. Let's talk about that first. What I'm assuming that what we're talking about here is helping people deal with current issues based on previous experiences, or what are we talking about here? What is using the remote of the mind to replay memories?
I think it's allowing yourself a little bit of freedom and permission of how you're going to replay those memories. And yet the most important aspect is that you're just doing that, replaying the memories. So you are, I kind of envision this overarching umbrella of storytelling. And so both strategies really go into how are we telling our story? How much information are we putting in? How much are we leaving out? Especially kiddos from a tough background. Anybody that's experienced anything traumatic in their past, if they haven't made sense of it, the best way of making sense of it is to talk about it. But if you haven't made sense of it, talking about it's going to be really difficult. And so we find ourselves avoiding some of the harder aspects of that story. So we take a traumatic event, and if we retell it, some kiddos will be like, no, it was just over. It just happened and everything's fine. And it stays trapped in the body, right? So as parents, our hope and our goal is to help kiddos make sense of what happened to them and to share it in a way that we honor that they experienced it and give them the tools to move on from it. And so with the remote, you get to stop, pause, take a break, not get overwhelmed by the emotions that it's evoking in you. Collect yourself, because once you start to feel those emotions, you're going to go into that downstairs brain, right? And so we need to allow the body to process that, hit play again once we know that that cognitive level is back to the upstairs brain so that we can hit play. If we need to fast forward from the traumatic event, we get to the end, because for the most part, come the end, the result is you're here, you're safe, you're okay. And so we know that the end result is a good thing. So we help make those connections of whatever it was, the end result is that you're here, you're safe, and you're fine. Now, once you're calm and we're together and it's right brain to right brain, we're engaged, we're connected, let's together go hit rewind and go through that traumatic experience together.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So the remote control thing is a way to visualize that process of start telling the story, but tell it to the extent that you maintain kind of I'm going to say control of yourself and your state, right? And feel free to pause and rewind again and replay and increment it up as necessary to get through the story.
Yeah.
With the goal being tell the story so that, because I guess as we harken back to the intro of this, name it to tame it.
That's right.
Right. And I've heard it said before, what's shareable is bearable. Those sorts of things like that, right?
Absolutely.
That's why that narrative's so powerful, right? Because, oh my gosh, I was just thinking of an example. But while I still try to figure out the example I was thinking of, so if we have these things stored back there in the emotional parts of our brain, in order to process them and get them, it's that downstairs upstairs thing again, right? It's by putting words to those thoughts and feelings that you're actually able to bring this to the part of your mind where you can make sense of it. It's because if you leave it in the recesses, you can't process it.
And if you don't name it, it stays in the right side and you just emotionalize it.
Yeah, and so it's because we experience our feelings, right? And so that's why there's so much power in storytelling. Because it's why we have all these modalities of therapy, but talk therapy has been around for 200 years or something, and it hasn't lost any steam yet because it just works, And so there are these other therapies that'll, for lack of a better term, will help you go back there and get the stuff. And help you bring it upstairs and to the left side of your brain there so you can really talk about it and process it. And if you can't put words to your feelings, there's a real struggle in actually processing them and making sense of them, because for too long people have thought that if we can just repress, deny, pretend, all of those things, dismiss, there's a thing that we've all heard, you just need to get over it. Well, that's actually not a prescription for any healing, because you don't get over it. You make sense of it, right? And the only way to make sense of it, not the only way, but a big way that I've been able to make sense of things, and I think the two of you would agree, is to be able to have somebody help you go back there and fetch it and talk about it, because they do become less scary that way. I used to have a horrible fear of flying. But figuring out what that was rooted in, almost dying on an airplane as a child because I choked, and talking about that and why that was scary to me with a friend of mine, and then I was flying on Saturday and it felt like somebody was actually grabbing the airplane and shaking it. And at no point did I have an actual cardiac event. And I said to my wife when I got home, if that was me 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure I'd have had a heart attack and a stroke on that airplane. But our ability to deal with our present situation is determined a lot by our processing of the past, right? Also, our ability to deal with the present situation that might be triggered by the child we're parenting has a lot to do with our ability to process the past, or not our ability, but how much of it we've made sense of.
So going back to what you started with about, and I realize you kind of qualified it a little bit by saying that trauma memories are encoded a little differently than traditional memories. But how much of that storytelling process is any of that storytelling process about helping the person clarify and research their experience to see if it's even, how do I want to ask this? So if I have an experience that is troublesome to me, I've come across situations, and I won't share the details of them, but I've come across situations in my own life where I've maybe held a grudge, where there was a traumatic experience that I had, and I viewed it in a certain way in my memory of it, though in decades later, processing through it with the other participants of that same event, we have completely different memories of that exact same stimuli. And so is any of this process that we're talking about from the book today about gaining peace through like a shared understanding of the same event? Like, is that any of this, or is that a different topic altogether?
You mean including the other participants or including anybody else from that memory into it?
Well, yeah, or I guess because I think where my mind goes when I start trying to think of like helping a person through a traumatic event, like my children, for example, like if my children had experienced a traumatic event and I'm trying to help them come to terms with that event, I think my initial thought is their memory is, I'm going to say accurate, but their memory, as we discussed before, is their encoded version of what the actual event was. And
it's accurate to them.
For them,
yeah,
that's probably all that matters initially. But it makes me wonder if there isn't some value in educating their memory of the event based on if there are other folks that were there too. So I'm thinking of like maybe siblings that were together in the same traumatic household. And you have one child who came away with one experience and another child who came away with another.
Can I ask you a question to see if I understand what you're asking?
Yeah.
Are you saying that the actual processing of the event, can that be done by yourself, or does it have to be done with the people who experienced it together?
Or are you asking the benefit or the outcome? More along the lines of, are we doing this so that we can have a collective resolution of the memory, or everybody feels accurate in the memory or feels at peace about the situation because they're all contributing?
Yeah, I don't think I'm asking either. I think I'm wondering if there's...
You're both wrong.
To be fair, you're both wrong.
I'm wondering, I think I'm wondering, and it may just be nonsensical, and I apologize to the half of you who have stopped the podcast at this point.
I have a response, I think, but keep going.
I want to hear your response, but let me clarify real quick. What I'm asking is this process, as a storytelling process, and this may be stepping beyond the scope of this actual chapter, but the importance of the storytelling, is it important that what's being processed is based on the actual event, or is it only important that we deal with the person's experience of the event?
I got you. And I think my response to that is it's what is the memory doing? What is the event doing to that person? Because the examples in the book and the examples in my life and the ones that Ryan has presented between almost drowning and then almost choking on the plane, it has created or allowed Ryan to get stuck in a certain situation, in so much that fear now allows our kids to get stuck. They feel stuck. The kiddo in the book, I don't want to go to swimming lessons because of this memory. Ryan not wanting to get on another flight or having cardiac arrest 5 years ago caused him to get stuck in the fear of what happened when he was a child. So I think ultimately the importance of processing is to help people get unstuck from the fear, to release themselves from the fear and to reorganize you're okay, you survived, and you may have even thrived through it. You're going to be okay the next time something like this happens.
So, talking about the swimming story, here's why making sense of and processing and getting to a place where Lori said, you can say, I'm okay. The swimming thing, it happened. I was in second grade. It wasn't really talked about very much after that. And didn't really think about it very much after that. But it took me a long time to be able to swim in a pool where I couldn't stand. And I just, figured that was just part of it. I didn't really pay much attention to it. Could go on water, could go on a boat on the ocean, could go on boats on rivers and lakes. It didn't bother me. It was just in the deep water in a swimming pool, right? Because that's where the actual event happened. Excuse me. Until I had children. And then all of a sudden, I'll never forget it, we're at my in-laws have a pool in their neighborhood, and we were there one time, and neither Tyler and my two oldest could swim. And so we're in the pool, and so now Daddy is becoming swim instructor because I'm so stressed out about these two children drowning in the pool that I can't swim, I can't do anything. I'm like hyper vigilant. I'm following them around. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hold you here, and then you're just gonna like kick off my hands and swim to the wall. It's like 2 feet. You can do this. And they eventually told their mother, please keep Daddy away from us. He's ruining the summer in the pool.
Okay.
And so that's when it hit me that this thing that happened to me when I was 7 years old was now really negatively impacting my ability to have fun with my children in the summertime 30 years later.
Right. You got stuck in that moment.
I was stuck. And so we had to talk about that. We had to process that. We had to figure that out and make sense of it. So much so now that, I don't know if I'm, or maybe I'm vigilant, no longer hyper vigilant, and I'm able to have fun with the children in the pool.
To me, this is, and for the sake of it being 75th anniversary of D-Day, that we have soldiers that come back with PTSD, and it can be the most benign situation at home, middle of the night, but the wife starts coughing in bed next, or the husband coughs, whether the soldier was a male or female. But the person that has PTSD is going to awaken with the rapid heart rate and the blood pressure, feeling and experiencing as though they're in the same situation, and they get stuck and are unable to realize that's just my wife or that's just my husband. I'm in my house. I'm safe. I'm in my bed. They are very physically, emotionally, cognitively, behaviorally stuck in that place where they were in Afghanistan, Iraq, wherever that place was, wherever that traumatic event was. And so to talk about it helps to bring sense to it as well as process, like you were saying, with the intention of I'm processing this so that I don't continue to get stuck in this place and I can move on and I can grow from it.
So those memories that you're describing and your near drowning experience memories and your tar bubble popping memories are explicit memories.
Yes.
And so I think as I'm looking at my cheat sheet over here, that the remember to remember strategy is about trying to integrate the implicit with the explicit.
I think that's fair to say. The remember to remember is just talking about your day for the most part. It's as the parent, you're being quizzical and you're asking and curious of how was your day? What was your best part? What was your worst part? What could you do over again if you could? What was the funniest part? In the sense of encouraging your kids to remember. Right. So that it becomes a story and a narrative to them.
Yeah. So it's an integrated part of your current experience. So
right.
like through rewind and remember through the remote control of the mind, you help them kind of resolve or come to peace with or terms, whatever you want to say, those maybe traumatic experiences. And it's important not to dismiss them, but remember they're a part of who you are and they're a part of who you have become.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to say that. Well,
and I'm going to give you credit because it's, for several, I don't know, weeks, months, whatever it is. And I'm probably overstating it, but you have asked that we do a show at some point on honoring the trauma. kind of a thing, right? And that's kind of what this is a little bit, right?
Yes.
It's not honoring, like, bowing down and worshiping the trauma, not that, but like giving it its rightful place in your history and the establishment of who you have become as a person.
Yeah. You give me goosebumps. Yeah.
Wow.
An actual genuine moment, folks.
I'm adding that to my signature line. Sean Wilson, goosebump maker.
It's interesting you talking about the day. So the example he's using here was good thing, bad thing, something kind you did for somebody else is one of the examples.
Yeah.
So we actually did that last night. And we don't do it every night, but we do it probably like maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. I'll ask them. And everybody can go around the table and can tell me a good thing that happened. Everybody can really tell me, can I tell you 2 things and the bad thing that happened?
Those are easy, right?
Yeah, it's usually somebody took my toy. But when asking them something nice they did for somebody else, everybody just kind of like, I've got to think about that. And they know it's coming.
Wow.
It is hard to think about a nice thing you did for somebody else during the day. But we do that, kind of make sense of the day that way. I'm trying to think, was bedtime any easy? Yeah, we did that last night and we didn't have anybody get up and through the night.
Tell me again what the exercise was. It was.
So we go around the table and we say, tell me one good thing that happened to you today.
Yeah. I like
or
that.
one good thing about your day. And then we'll do the lap, and Kayla and I are included in this. And then we'll do one bad thing about your day. And then tell me something kind you did for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because we really want to recognize that good things happen, we want to recognize that bad things happen, and we want to recognize that you need to be kind. Because when you have 6 children who all have their personalities, wanting them to be kind to each other is something that we really value at the house.
I am totally going to steal that. So I do this thing with my 5-year-old. I started probably about 4 or 5 months ago. We had a bedtime ritual and routine for forever where I would read to her. And after a while, that kind of fell out of favor. I don't know. She still enjoys to be read to, but maybe just not right at bedtime. And I found that reading to her didn't necessarily promote sleepfulness for whatever reason. But because I don't get to spend much time with her during the week because I'm at work, now we have conversation time.
Yeah.
And it's a real crowd pleaser. Between she and I, is that a crowd too?
Okay.
I'm using
Imagine there's stuffed animals there too somewhere, right?
The point I'm trying to ramble to is I'm totally going to steal that. And that's going to be like items for discussion and conversation time.
Yeah.
What good thing did you do? What good thing happened to you? What is something that, maybe we would do differently next time or something like that. That's a fantastic
And for the little
idea.
ones, it was, what was your rainbow of the day and what was your thunderstorm?
Oh, I love
you
that.
can make it fun and how did you
Relatable.
water all the flowers? How did you contribute? What did you do?
I love
How
that.
did you shine today?
How did you shine today? I like that.
I don't
That should
get
be on a
goosebumps,
t-shirt.
but if I did, I had that gene removed.
You use all your goosebump power into making them.
I want to be mindful of the time, but I want to, something that we just kind of skimmed over, but I think to me it's just brilliant. And it's on page 73 to 76. And it's the dialogue between Tina Bryson and her son about the swimming lessons and how he ends it. Just the cliff notes is that she's telling him about these butterflies in his belly. And she asks him empoweringly, how can we get rid of the butterflies? And hence the title of the book. But he says, well, we can kill the butterflies. And she, her response is something along the lines of, okay, I love that. Can we come up with something a little less violent? How about free the butterflies or liberate the butterflies? And he says, nope, I kind of like kill. And she says, okay, kill it is. And I just really love the value in that because I think to sit and accept our kids' responses and our kids' ownership when it feels uncomfortable to us is really difficult to do.
So, as has become our tradition near the end of these episodes, I'm going to lob a grenade right into the middle of the table. That sparks up conversation. But
I've been waiting for it for 5 minutes.
Had her child been a foster child, in foster care,
or a child
engaged in a conversation with a foster parent and said to their foster parent, let's go with kill. That would have sparked incident reports. That would have sparked crisis situations because this child now has this homicidal tendency towards fluttery creatures, right? Like time and time again. Sorry, this is my personal rant for the day. But time and time again, we take things out of context that our kids say and just in foster care because we're so concerned about compliance and so concerned about covering our own selves in these situations that we just like take these things and run with them. And there's certainly a time for that. I don't want to make this sound like there isn't, but how beautiful that she said, okay, right? Like,
that's right.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Because that's what he needed to make sense of it.
That's right.
And so did they really kill actual butterflies? Were any butterflies harmed in the making of that dialogue?
Stay tuned for next week's episode where we find out.
Where we call Tina Bryson and ask them how many butterflies she's killed.
Okay, well, my last point that I wanted to make, if you can get to the very last part of chapter 4, where they give you some notes on how to apply this for us as adults and as parents. And if you listened or were able to tune into the last podcast, I had referenced this. So I just want to come full circle and bring it back up. This, in my book, it's page 90 and 91, and it's integrating ourselves, moving our own memories from implicit to explicit. And I love the charge that it puts on us as parents to be mindful and to be asking when we are engaging in a child. This was my favorite tool, asking ourselves, is my response here making sense? And to be mindful of, had I gone, oh my gosh, kill the butterflies? No, I'm not being, it's not making sense to the child of why my response would be so big. It would make sense to me of, oh, I'm worried about complaints. But then if I even peel back the layers of that, I'd realize none of that really makes any sense.
Right.
Then I'm worried about complaints when this child is just trying to take ownership over his own butterflies. And if he wants to kill them, that means that he's going to be less nervous next time we go to swimming lessons, and to make sense of it. And then I'll leave it at the last sentence in that chapter is making sense of your own life, which will help you make sense, which will help your kids do the same with theirs. And I think that there's just such a charge for us to help make sense.
Preach.
And really, we got to do it on our own.
So I love that you brought that up and that how he ends it. So I want to read a sentence from that I think will be my closing thought. And we are not going to apologize for jumping the gun on our closing thoughts before you ask them. We just, after 10 episodes, figured out that's how this rolls.
That's coming
So
next.
here's what's going to happen is I'm going to take those words that you just said and rearrange them in such an order that what you actually say is, I apologize for jumping the gun. The video is going to be all disjointed, but the audio is going to sound all right.
All the power.
Implicit memories can trigger responses from us that cause us to act in ways we don't want to. Old feelings of being left out, abandoned, or put down by others or by our own parents can keep us from being mature, loving, and respectful when we interact with our kids. It's that can keep us from being mature and loving that's terrifying.
And yet so true.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
So make sense of it.
Somebody should listen to this.
Nobody's going to do it for you.
Nobody's going to listen to it for you?
No, nobody's going to make sense of it. I didn't hear what you said.
I do like how the two of you were having parallel conversations and they just kind of collided.
Directly to you.
Like at the end of that movie, Syriana, where the whole movie collides at an intersection.
Okay, guys, thanks for listening to this episode. We hope that you found value in it. We really enjoy putting these together for you, and I think you'll find value. At least those who need to hear it will find value. Don't forget to share. We are trying to grow the show. We feel like we have a pretty good reach going, but there's more folks out there that we feel can benefit from this. And if you agree with us, share it, like it, star it, review it.
Put it on a T-shirt.
Put it on a T-shirt. Put it on
Or
a
a
mug.
coffee mug.
We totally need show mugs.
I think we do too.
If you're somebody who would be interested in drinking your morning cup of joe out of a Foster Family Matters coffee mug, join our Facebook group and let us know.
Or afternoon cup.
Or if you're just the type of person that thinks this is just flavored water and drinks it all day long, then I don't know when that goes. This is, yeah. Nonetheless, let me refocus. We're trying to close the show out here. Thanks so much. So we're 1, 2, 3 episodes into our summer book reading here. We've got a couple more to go. We'll have a more coherent number for you probably on the next episode about how many more we'll have of these, and then we'll jump into our fall programming after that. But again, thanks so much for listening. Share it with everybody, especially those you don't like, because we'll change their minds and turn them into fantastic, wonderful people that you want in your life. And that's it.
Well done.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.